Hey guys, tonight we're diving into the steamy, chaotic world of Roman bathhouses, but not as a pampered citizen lounging in luxury. Instead, you're about to experience what it was really like to be one of the invisible workers who kept these massive complexes running. You're a bath attendant, and your life is about to get very, very complicated. Picture this. It's still dark outside, maybe 4 in the morning, and you're already awake in your cramped quarters beneath the baths of Caracalla. The stone walls around you are damp with condensation, and you can hear the distant rumble of the hypocaust system that never fully shuts down. Your feet hit the cold floor, and immediately you're reminded that while the wealthy Romans upstairs will soon be luxuriating in perfectly heated pools, you'll be spending your day in a world of extreme temperatures, demanding customers, and the constant threat of scalding steam. You probably won't survive this job for more than a few years. The combination of heat exposure, chemical burns from cleaning agents, and the occasional violent customer tends to take its toll. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. I love seeing how this community spans the globe. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stumble through the narrow servant corridors, your oil lamp casting dancing shadows on the walls. The air is already thick with the smell of burning wood and the mineral tang of heated water. As you make your way toward the furnace rooms, you pass other attendants. Some have been here for decades, their faces weathered by constant exposure to heat and steam, while others are fresh-faced slaves who arrived just yesterday from some distant province. The hierarchy among bath workers is fierce. Senior attendants guard their knowledge jealously, knowing that understanding the complex systems of pipes, boilers, and heating chambers is what keeps them valuable. The furnace room hits you like a wall of superheated air. Historians still argue whether bath attendants were primarily slaves, freedmen, or a mix of both. But one thing is certain: regardless of your legal status, you're about to spend the next 16 hours in conditions that would make a modern factory worker call their union. The furnaces stretch out before you in neat rows, each one a simple but effective masonry structure that needs constant feeding. You grab your first armload of wood, not the expensive charcoal that only the wealthiest private baths could afford, but rough-cut logs from the coppiced forests outside Rome. The science of keeping a Roman bath at the perfect temperature was surprisingly sophisticated. You don't just throw wood into a fire and hope for the best. Each furnace heats specific boilers, and those boilers feed different pools through a complex network of lead pipes that can be adjusted with bronze valves. The caldarium needs to be hot enough to make wealthy Romans feel luxuriously warm, but not so hot that they literally cook. The tepidarium should be pleasantly warm, like a perfect spring day, and the frigidarium well that's fed by cold water pipes that bypass the heating system entirely. As you work feeding the hungry furnaces, you can hear the first stirrings of life in the city above. Soon the morning rush will begin, and you'll be dealing with hundreds of Romans who expect their bathing experience to be perfect. They don't want to know about the army of workers who make their luxury possible. They just want hot water, clean towels, and a place to see and be seen. But here's the thing that would surprise most people: Bath attendants weren't just manual laborers. You had to be part engineer, part diplomat, and part detective, because keeping a Roman bath running smoothly required skills that would impress a modern facilities manager. The sun is just beginning to peak over the Roman skyline when you make your first crucial decision of the day, which boiler to fire up first. This isn't random. It's a calculated dance of thermodynamics that your predecessor taught you through painful trial and error. You start with the massive bronze vessel that feeds the caldarium because it takes nearly 2 hours to bring that beast up to proper temperature. The boiler stands about 2 meters tall, gleaming dully in the firelight, and when you peer into its depths, you can see the network of lead pipes that will carry liquid comfort to Rome's elite. Your hands work automatically adjusting the dampers and air vents around each furnace. Too much airflow and the fires burn too hot, cracking the boiler metal, or worse, creating dangerous pressure that could send scalding water shooting through the pipes like a geyser. Too little air and the fires smolder weakly, leaving you with lukewarm pools and very angry customers. The Romans had no pressure gauges or thermometers. You judge everything by sound smell and the subtle vibrations that travel through the stone floors when the hypocaust system is running properly. The hypocaust is your secret weapon, though most bathers never even realize it exists. Beneath their feet lies a hidden world of brick piers and stone pillars, creating a raised floor that allows hot air from your furnaces to circulate like an ancient form of radiant heating. As you feed more wood into the fires, you can hear the hot gases rushing through the maze of channels beneath the bath floors. The sound is oddly soothing, a low whoosh that tells you the system is working. But here's where things get tricky. Different rooms need different temperatures, and you control this by opening and closing wall flues that let the hot air escape at precisely the right rate. You pause at the wall of the caldarium, running your hand along the tegulae mammatai, those strange nipple tiles that create air gaps for heat circulation. Historians still argue whether these were a Roman invention or borrowed from earlier civilizations, but you don't care about academic debates when you're trying to keep several hundred Romans from complaining about cold spots. The tiles are getting warm to the touch, which means the wall heating system is starting to work. In a few hours, these walls will be pleasantly toasty, creating the enveloping warmth that makes wealthy Romans feel like they're being embraced by the gods themselves. Your next stop is the testudo, that ingenious bronze half-cylinder embedded in the wall of the hottest pool. The outer face sits directly against the furnace wall, while the inner face opens into the pool water. It's basically a heat exchanger that would make a modern engineer nod in approval. You check the bronze surface for any signs of cracking or corrosion, because a failed testudo means either scalding hot water or conversely a disappointingly lukewarm pool. Either way, it means angry customers and possibly an angry supervisor who might decide you're not worth keeping around. The boiler feeding the tepidarium comes next, and this is where your skills really matter. The warm room needs to be perfectly comfortable, hot enough that people feel relaxed, but not so hot that they start sweating immediately. Romans used the tepidarium as a transition space, a place to adjust gradually between the shock of cold water and the intense heat of the caldarium. Getting this temperature wrong throws off the entire bathing sequence, and experienced bathers can tell instantly if something's off. You climb a narrow ladder to check the roof tanks that collect rainwater. Even though this bath complex is fed by the Aqua Claudia aqueduct, you never know when the water supply might be interrupted by maintenance earthquakes or the occasional barbarian attack on the aqueduct lines outside the city. The backup systems are just as important as the primary ones, and a good bath attendant always thinks 3 problems ahead. The lead-lined tanks above you hold thousands of gallons of water, and you test the flow by opening a small valve and watching the pressure. Here's something that might surprise you. Roman bath attendants were basically amateur meteorologists. You constantly watch the sky feeling for changes in humidity and wind direction because weather affects everything about how the baths operate. A sudden rainstorm means muddier aqueduct water and more complaints about cloudy pools. High humidity makes the hot rooms feel even more intense, potentially causing customers to faint. Cold weather means you need to burn more fuel to maintain proper temperatures, and fuel costs money that your supervisor tracks obsessively. As the morning progresses, you make your rounds with a bronze key ring that marks you as someone with real responsibility. Each key opens different valves in the pipe network, allowing you to fine-tune water flow between pools. Too much fresh water, and you waste expensive aqueduct supply. Too little, and the pools become stagnant cesspools that even desperate Romans won't enter. The trick is finding that sweet spot where the water stays reasonably clear while minimizing waste, a balancing act that requires years of experience to master. The morning calm shatters like a dropped amphora when the first wave of bathers arrives. You hear them before you see them, the rumble of voices, the slap of sandals on marble, and the occasional sharp command from someone important enough to expect immediate service. Through the service entrance, you watch as Rome's social hierarchy files into your carefully prepared sanctuary, senators in pristine togas, wealthy merchants showing off their latest jewelry, and the occasional imperial freedman whose proximity to power makes everyone else nervous. Your first customer interaction comes within minutes. A portly wine merchant waves you over with the imperious gesture of someone who's never been told no. He wants his personal strigil cleaned, his towels arranged just so, and someone to test the water temperature in the caldarium because he's convinced it's not hot enough. You nod respectfully while mentally calculating how many other demands you'll face in the next few minutes. The afternoon rush at a major Roman bath complex is like trying to run a 5-star hotel, a community center, and a medical spa all at once, except your customers think they own you. The towel situation alone could drive you to drink cheap wine. Romans don't bring their own towels. They expect the bathhouse to provide everything. You're constantly running between the storage rooms and the pool's arms full of clean linen, trying to stay ahead of demand. But here's the thing. Nobody tells you about Roman towels. They're not the fluffy, absorbent cotton you might imagine. They're rough linen cloths that serve more as scrapers than absorbers, and wealthy Romans go through them like a modern teenager goes through tissues. You've learned to hide the best towels for your most important customers because running out during peak hours is a career-ending mistake. The real chaos starts when the strigils come out. These curved bronze scrapers are supposed to remove oil, sweat, and dead skin, but in the hands of enthusiastic bathers, they become projectiles. You've been hit by flying strigils more times than you can count, and you've developed an almost supernatural ability to dodge them while carrying heavy water jugs. Historians still argue whether Romans actually enjoyed the painful scraping process or just endured it as necessary grooming, but from your perspective, it's just another hazard in an already dangerous job. Pool maintenance during peak hours is like performing surgery while riding a chariot. The pools need constant attention, skimming debris from the surface, adjusting water flow, and discreetly cleaning up the various biological contributions that mass bathing inevitably produces. You've perfected the art of cleaning around bathers without making them feel like you're implying they're dirty, which is a diplomatic skill that would serve you well in the Senate. The bronze skimming nets you use are works of art in themselves, but they're also weapons when wielded by an experienced attendant who needs to clear floating hair and dead skin without disturbing the conversation of nearby politicians. The massage area presents its own unique challenges. Romans love their massages, but they also love to conduct business while being rubbed down with olive oil. You're responsible for keeping the massage tables clean, the oil supplies topped off, and the massage slaves supplied with fresh cloths. But you also become an unwilling witness to some of Rome's most sensitive negotiations. You've overheard grain contracts that could affect the city's food supply, military appointments that could shift the balance of power, and marital arrangements that would make gossip columnists weep with joy. Managing the different pools during rush hour requires the organizational skills of a military commander. The Natatio, the swimming pool, attracts the athletic young men who want to show off their physiques. The caldarium draws the politicians who use the intense heat as a test of endurance and masculine virtue. The tepidarium becomes a social hub where business deals are struck and alliances forged. And the frigidarium, that's where the truly hardcore Romans prove their toughness by plunging into shockingly cold water after roasting themselves in the hot rooms. You've learned to read the social dynamics like a map. When certain senators enter the same space, you know there's going to be tension that could spill over into actual conflict. When wealthy merchants start clustering around a particular politician, you can predict they're about to make offers that could influence government policy. And when the imperial freedmen start whispering in corners, you know to stay far away because that's the kind of conversation that gets people exiled or worse. The equipment failures always happen at the worst possible moments. A boiler gasket blows just as the afternoon crowd reaches its peak, sending scalding steam into a room full of naked senators. A pipe joint fails, flooding the tepidarium with cold water and destroying the carefully maintained temperature gradient. Or worse, the Hippocaust system develops a blockage, filling the rooms with smoke and sending everyone scrambling for the exits while cursing your competence. The afternoon heat isn't just coming from your furnaces anymore, it's radiating from the sweaty bodies of hundreds of Romans packed into spaces that were designed for luxury, not efficiency. You weave through the crowds with practiced stealth, carrying fresh supplies of the olive oil that keeps Roman society literally and figuratively lubricated. But today, you're not just watching the usual social theater. You're witnessing the kind of political maneuvering that could reshape the empire, all conducted by naked men who think their nudity makes them equals. You pause near the caldarium's marble bench, where Senator Gaius Flavius is holding court. his considerable belly glistening with oil and sweat. He's explaining to a circle of eager listeners how the grain shipments from Egypt could be redirected for the right price, while his hands gesture expansively, sending droplets of perspiration flying. You pretend to adjust a nearby oil lamp while mentally filing away information that could be worth a fortune to the right buyer. The beauty of being a bath attendant is that Romans treat you like furniture present, but invisible functional, but forgettable. The conversation shifts when Marcus Crassus Jr. arrives his entrance, causing a subtle but noticeable change in the room's energy. You've learned to recognize these power dynamics, who defers to whom, who avoids eye contact, and who suddenly discovers urgent business elsewhere. Crassus has been building alliances for months, and the bathhouse is his unofficial campaign headquarters. He slides into the hot water with practiced ease, immediately launching into a discussion about upcoming gladiator games that everyone knows is really about vote buying and crowd control. Your oil duties give you access to every conversation, every whispered deal, every not-so-subtle threat. Romans might be naked, but they're wearing their ambitions like invisible armor. You refill the bronze vessels that hold the scented oils, rose for the wealthy matron's cedar for the military veterans, and the expensive balsam reserved for anyone with direct imperial connections. Each oil tells a story about its user's status and aspirations, and you've become an expert at reading these aromatic social signals. The really interesting conversations happen in the tepidarium, where the moderate temperature encourages longer stays and looser tongues. Today, you overhear a fascinating discussion between two imperial freedmen about supply contracts for the army in Germania. One of them is clearly taking bribes to provide substandard equipment, while the other is threatening to expose him unless he gets a cut of the profits. You carefully pour oil into their personal containers while absorbing every detail, because information like this could buy your freedom if you knew how to use it safely. But Roman bath politics isn't just about money and power. It's about survival in a world where today's ally could be tomorrow's executioner. You watch as Lucius Antonius carefully avoids mentioning his brother's recent fall from grace, while everyone pretends not to notice that his usual entourage has mysteriously disappeared. The steam rising from the hot pools seems to carry away more than just sweat. It's dissolving relationships, erasing loyalties, and creating new alliances based on nothing more than proximity and shared vulnerability. The women's section operates under different rules, but with equal intensity. When you deliver supplies to the female attendants, you catch glimpses of conversations that would make male politicians envious. Wealthy Roman matrons wield influence through their husbands, sons, and lovers, but their networks are often more sophisticated than anything the men create. They discuss everything from religious appointments to military promotions, all while having their body hair plucked with bronze tweezers that make torture devices look gentle. Historians still argue whether Roman baths were primarily social spaces or political ones, but from your perspective, the distinction is meaningless. Every conversation is potentially political, every friendship could become an alliance, and every insult might trigger a chain of events that ends with someone fed to the lions. You've learned to navigate this world by staying useful but unremarkable, informed but silent, present but invisible. The oil itself becomes a currency of sorts. The really wealthy Romans bring their own supplies, exotic blends from Egypt, perfumed concoctions from Arabia, and medical preparations that cost more than most people earn in a year. But they also expect the bathhouse to provide backup supplies, and the quality of what you offer becomes a statement about the establishment's status. Running out of good oil during peak hours is like a restaurant running out of wine, technically survivable, but socially catastrophic. Your hands are permanently stained with oil residue, your clothes reek of various aromatic combinations, and your ears are full of secrets that could topple governments or destroy lives. The irony isn't lost on you that while you're helping Romans clean their bodies, you're getting progressively dirtier in every sense of the word. The oil pools on the marble surfaces, creating slippery hazards that have sent more than one pompous senator sliding into undignified heaps, much to the secret amusement of everyone present. The screaming starts in the caldarium, cutting through the usual murmur of political conversation like a gladius through silk. You drop your oil vessel and sprint toward the sound, knowing that in a Roman bathhouse, emergencies escalate faster than gossip spreads through the forum. Through the steam, you see what you've been dreading all day. An elderly senator has collapsed in the hottest pool, his face purple and his breathing shallow. The other bathers are backing away like he's got the plague because nobody wants to be associated with a medical emergency that might require them to actually help. You plunge into the scalding water without hesitation, your tunic instantly soaking through as you grab that unconscious man under his arms. The heat that felt luxurious to him has become potentially lethal, and you're fighting both the temperature and his dead weight as you drag him toward the cooler tepidarium. Other attendants appear as if summoned by magic. This isn't the first time someone has overestimated their tolerance for extreme heat, and it won't be the last. Roman men pride themselves on enduring discomfort, but their egos frequently write checks their bodies can't cash. The victim starts breathing more regularly once you get him into cooler air, but now you're dealing with a different problem, the political implications of a senator nearly dying on your watch. His name is Quintus Fabius, and he chairs the committee that oversees public works contracts, including the funding that keeps this bathhouse operational. If he dies, his family will blame the bath management. If he lives but feels embarrassed, he might take his revenge through bureaucratic channels. Either way, your job security just took a hit hotter than the caldarium itself. While you're administering basic first aid, cold cloths, elevated feet, and gentle encouragement, you hear a commotion from the direction of the boiler rooms. One of your fellow workers comes running with news that makes your stomach drop. The main boiler feeding the caldarium has developed a crack, and superheated steam is shooting through gaps in the masonry like miniature geysers. The repair will require draining the entire heating system, which means no hot water for hours, which means hundreds of angry customers, which means someone's going to get blamed. You leave Senator Fabius in the care of other attendants and race toward the mechanical crisis. The boiler room is like a vision of the underworld, steam everywhere, workers shouting over the hiss of escaping pressure and the constant threat of serious burns from jets of superheated water vapor. The crack in the bronze boiler wall is spreading, even as you watch, and you realize this isn't going to be a quick patch job. This is going to require completely shutting down the coldarium, possibly for days. The politics of a bathhouse equipment failure are more complex than military strategy. You can't just announce that the hot pools are closed. That would trigger a riot among customers who consider hot baths a fundamental right of Roman citizenship. Instead, you have to manage the crisis through careful misdirection, strategic delays, and what modern managers would recognize as damage control. You start by quietly suggesting to key customers that the tepidarium is particularly nice today, while gradually reducing the temperature in the caldarium to make it less appealing. Meanwhile, another emergency develops in the women's section. One of the female bathers has apparently been using some kind of experimental hair removal preparation that's caused severe chemical burns. Roman cosmetics are a dangerous business. Wealthy women regularly apply compounds containing lead mercury and other substances that would horrify modern dermatologists. The screaming from the women's area suggests this particular beauty treatment has gone spectacularly wrong, and you can hear the female attendants calling for vinegar and olive oil to neutralize whatever caustic substance is eating through the victim's skin. Historians still argue whether Roman medical knowledge was advanced or primitive, but from your perspective, as someone dealing with bath-related injuries, it's mostly just inadequate. You've learned basic first aid through painful experience, but serious medical emergencies require calling in actual physicians who may or may not show up quickly and who definitely charge fees that most bath attendants can't afford. The house physician for this complex is competent but expensive, and he has an annoying tendency to blame the staff for any injuries that occur on the premises. The boiler situation is deteriorating rapidly. The crack has widened enough that you can see flames through the gap, which means the fire is in direct contact with the pool water. This creates a dangerous feedback loop. The water cools the fire, which makes the attendants add more fuel, which increases the pressure, which widens the crack. You're watching a chain reaction that could destroy the entire heating system and possibly part of the building along with it. Your crisis management skills are getting a workout that would challenge a modern emergency coordinator. You're simultaneously coordinating the boiler repair, managing customer complaints about temperature fluctuations, overseeing medical care for multiple injured bathers, and trying to prevent panic from spreading through the complex. The other attendants look to you for direction, even though you're technically not in charge, because competence in a crisis creates its own authority structure. The day's final emergency comes from an unexpected source. A fight breaks out between two groups of young men in the exercise yard. What started as friendly athletic competition has escalated into serious violence, possibly triggered by political rivalries or personal grudges that have nothing to do with the baths. But now you're responsible for stopping the brawl before it spreads inside and disrupts the delicate social ecosystem you've spent all day maintaining. The sun is hanging low over the 7 hills when you finally get permission to begin the evening drainage ritual. The last stragglers are making their reluctant exits, a few die-hard politicians still trying to squeeze out one more deal, and several wealthy matrons who've made careers out of extending their bathing sessions until the staff wants to scream. You've survived another day in the humid chaos of Rome's most demanding social institution, and now comes the part of your job that nobody sees but everyone depends on making everything clean again. The pools tell the story of the day's activities in ways that would make archaeologists weep with fascination and modern health inspectors faint with horror. The caldarium water has turned a murky brown-green, thick with accumulated oils, dead skin cells, and substances you prefer not to identify too closely. The surface is covered with a film that catches the lamplight like oil on water, creating rainbow patterns that would be beautiful if you didn't know what caused them. Marcus Aurelius wasn't exaggerating when he described bathwater as a repulsive blend of oil sweat and filth. He was being optimistic. You start with the drain valves, massive bronze mechanisms that require two people to operate safely. The engineering behind Roman drainage systems was actually quite sophisticated. The wastewater flows through carefully designed channels that eventually connect to the city's sewer network. But opening these drains releases smells that could knock a gladiator unconscious, and you've learned to breathe through your mouth while working. The water gurgles and rushes away with sounds that echo through the underground chambers like the complaints of angry gods. While the pools drain, you begin the tedious process of scrubbing the marble surfaces. Romans loved their marble-white Carrara stone-colored porphyry from Egypt and rare green marble from Greece that cost more than most people's houses. But marble is porous, which means it absorbs oils, perfumes, and other substances that create permanent stains. You scrub with bronze brushes and cleaning compounds made from ash sand and urine that would strip paint off a chariot. The work is backbreaking, but it's also oddly meditative after the chaos of customer service. The hypocaust system requires its own cleaning ritual. You descend into the maze of pillars and channels beneath the floors, carrying oil lamps to illuminate the spaces where hot air circulates. Down here, you're in a different world, the architectural skeleton that supports the luxury above. The brick piers are blackened with soot, and you spend hours scraping away carbon deposits that could block air circulation. It's claustrophobic work that leaves you covered in ash and wondering if the slaves who built these spaces ever imagined someone would have to maintain them daily. The boiler rooms present their own challenges. Remember that cracked boiler from earlier? It's still hissing steam, but now you have to figure out how to repair it without shutting down the entire complex tomorrow. Roman metallurgy was advanced for its time, but bronze boilers weren't designed for the constant thermal stress of heating thousands of gallons of water daily. You're essentially performing surgery on a patient who can't be anesthetized, trying to patch the crack while the metal is still hot and under pressure. As you work, you reflect on the strange world you've spent the day observing. The bathhouse is like a miniature version of the empire itself, impressive engineering supporting complex social structures with all the benefits and problems that combination creates. You've seen senators making deals that could affect millions of people, wealthy women wielding influence that shapes imperial policy, and freedmen accumulating power that would have been unthinkable in earlier generations. But you've also seen the costs, the exploitation, the violence, the casual cruelty that underpins all that marble luxury. The cleaning compounds you use are almost as dangerous as the boiler repairs. Roman chemistry was surprisingly advanced, but safety regulations didn't exist. You work with caustic solutions that can blind you, abrasive powders that destroy your lungs and metal cleaning agents that eat through skin. Your hands are scarred from years of chemical burns, and you've lost colleagues to respiratory problems that nobody understood but everyone accepted as occupational hazards. Historians still argue whether Roman bath attendants were primarily motivated by wages fear or professional pride, but the truth is probably simpler. You do this work because the alternatives are worse. In a society where social mobility is limited and most jobs involve either military service or agricultural labor, working in a bathhouse offers relative security and the occasional opportunity to profit from overheard information. It's dangerous work, but it's predictable danger in an unpredictable world. The final task of your day involves restocking supplies for tomorrow's chaos. Fresh towels, olive oil cleaning compounds, and fuel for the furnaces, all the materials that transform a marble shell into a functioning social institution. You check and double check everything because running out of supplies during peak hours is the kind of mistake that gets bath attendants sold to gladiator schools or shipped off to work in provincial mines. As darkness settles over the city, you take a moment to appreciate the strange beauty of the empty bath complex. The marble gleams in the lamplight, the pools reflect dancing flames like liquid mirrors, and the silence feels profound after hours of echoing voices. Tomorrow will bring new crowds, new crises, and new secrets whispered in steam-filled chambers. But tonight the baths belong to you and your fellow workers, the invisible army that keeps Roman civilization clean, comfortable, and politically lubricated. Word count 1064. The work is finally done, and you make your way back to your quarters beneath the complex. Your body aches from the constant heat, your hands are raw from cleaning compounds, and your mind is full of secrets that could change the course of history. But you're also oddly satisfied, knowing that tomorrow, hundreds of Romans will enjoy the luxury you've prepared for them, even if they never acknowledge your existence. The Hippocaust system settles into its nighttime rhythm, the furnaces banked, but not extinguished, maintaining just enough heat to prevent the massive stone structure from cooling completely. You drift off to sleep, listening to the gentle whisper of air moving through channels and the distant drip of water finding its level in marble pools. In your dreams, you're not scrubbing floors or dodging flying strigils. You're floating in perfectly heated water under a star-filled sky, finally experiencing the luxury you spend your life creating for others. The Roman bathhouse sleeps around you, its marble corridors holding the day's secrets in their silent stones. Politicians and merchant senators and slaves all have passed through these spaces, leaving traces of their ambitions and fears in the steam-warmed air. Tomorrow the cycle will begin again, but tonight, in the quiet darkness beneath the eternal city, even bath attendants can dream of floating weightless in warm, clean water, surrounded by the gentle hum of perfectly functioning furnaces and the soft whisper of Roman engineering working exactly as designed. Sweet dreams await in the heated chambers of history, where luxury and labor dance together in endless, steamy embrace.